Those are very strong words from Jesus, the Prince of Peace. It almost seems like, where is the peace? He's talking about fire, setting the earth on fire. And we picture images of great destruction when we think of fire. And yet he says, I wish it were already blazing. And his anguish is great until his baptism in fire is to be accomplished. And then he speaks of peace, but saying that he has not come to establish peace. He has come to bring division, he says. Division of the most intimate kind among family members, among those who are most committed to love one another. He brings division. What are we to make of that? Well, I think the first thing that can help to shed light on this is that the Gospel of Luke was written at least 40 years, maybe 50, after the time of Jesus. So in other words, 40 years elapsed. That would be a full turnover of generations, wouldn't it? Until between the time that Jesus spoke these words and they were written down. Now, it should be kind of obvious that a lot happened during that time. So that actually, when these words were being remembered and retold in St. Luke's Gospel, this kind of division, conflict, was already a part of, in fact, it was even at the heart of, the experience of the people who were remembering those words. In other words, for them, Jesus was not talking about something that was going to happen in the future. He was talking about what was already happening right in their midst. Something that was already happening because they were disciples of Jesus, because they were his followers. And that kind of conflict, division, is sadly also very much a part of our own world and our own lives. And the divisions are getting deeper, more polarized, with people of various beliefs and ideological positions being opposed to one another, to the point of struggle, of fighting, to the point of violence and murder, sometimes mass murder. What can heal those divisions? I think the only reason that Jesus would be talking about divisions happening among his people, the people that he calls his own, the only reason Jesus would be talking about it is that he gives the means to heal those divisions. The first thing we have to pay attention to when we listen to him talking about those divisions, those conflicts that are inevitable to happen, the first thing we need to pay attention to is nowhere does he indicate what we would like to hear from him. Nowhere does Jesus say he is taking sides. Nowhere does he say that he is on our side against the people that we don't like or who don't like us. Nowhere does he say that he favors one side or the other of any of the arguments and disputes and conflicts and wars that rise up among us humans because of our greed, because of our self-centeredness, because of our desires for being right. So the first thing we need to realize is that when enmities develop, he is not taking our side. In fact, we have to continually examine ourselves as to whether in all of our words and actions, whether we are taking his side. Because it's very easy to delude ourselves into thinking we keep this commandment or that commandment. We have this way of looking at things or that way of looking at things, and therefore Jesus is on our side. So Jesus is not on our side. We need to be sure that we are on his side. How can we be sure we are on his side? First of all, by prayer. Now, prayer, the word prayer has a bad reputation because it's often used in a very superficial, even empty sense. Oh, you're suffering some difficulty? Okay, I'll pray for you. And then when you've said, I'll pray for you, ask yourself, do you really? Oh, this person is my enemy. Jesus tells me I should pray for my enemies. So I'll pray for them. God, straighten them out. God, protect me from them. God, help me to win a victory over them. Is that really praying for your enemy? I don't think so. How do we pray for our enemies? We simply lift them up to the Lord. And we say, Lord, this person, these people, are also your very dear children. You have called them to your service. I ask you, Lord, to reveal yourself to them, to touch them with your healing grace, and reveal yourself to me. Touch me with your healing grace, and remove the barriers from my own heart that prevent me from loving them. Help me, Lord, to love them. Help me to see you in my enemy. Now that is a prayer that is worthy of the God to whom we are praying. Because if we are asking God constantly to remove everything in our lives that prevents us from loving one another, even our enemies, the way that he loves us, that is the God who will answer that prayer. Because we're asking God not to change the other person, we're asking God to change our hearts. That prayer will be answered. Maybe not always in the way that we would like, but maybe the prayer that seeks to change us rather than the other person will enable us then to learn how to love them. Love, too, is a word that is used in so many different ways to mean so many different things that it's become almost meaningless. And so often when we hear the word love or use the word love, what we mean is sort of like, pleasing, something warm and fuzzy, something pleasant. But when we hear God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son and sent him to take on all of our infirmities, including the ultimate disgrace and infirmity of death, when he has so identified himself with us, love takes on a totally different meaning. Love isn't getting something. Love isn't, you're giving me something. Love is rather self-giving. In fact, it is self-emptying. And if God is love, it is the nature of God to seek to overcome divisions by emptying himself on behalf of the other. And that is the model of love that God gives to us in the person of Jesus Christ on the cross. If you want to love the way he did, have the courage, have the generosity to empty yourself, even on behalf of the other, even on behalf of the enemy. What is one of the first functions of love? I think anybody who has struggled with what it means to love a person whom we don't like and to put that into practice, the first thing that we must do is shut up and listen. Listening to the other person sincerely and deeply, listening to what really is in their mind, not just what we think is in their mind, listening to what really is in their heart, not just to what we think is in their heart. We may very well find something that we hear leading to understanding, leading to empathy. And empathy is really walking in the other person's shoes. It's not just sympathy. It's not just feeling sorry for somebody. Empathy is putting oneself in the position of the other. Now, when we've got two people or two groups of people, families, countries, nations, all the divisions in our world, when we've got people shouting and screaming at one another and not listening, somebody has to have the courage to shut up. Somebody has to have the courage to listen to the other. Somebody has to have the courage to say, perhaps I don't agree with you, but I understand. I can accept where you're coming from. Now, let's see where we can find common ground. When we begin to do that, that is when bridges will be built instead of walls. That is when we can empty ourselves as a gift for the other and receive the other person as a gift to us. When we begin to listen, to understand, to empathize. Most of us say, well, I'll do that, but they've got to do it first, then it's never going to happen. It takes courage to be the first one who stops shouting and starts listening. It takes courage to be the one who risks themselves being misunderstood in order to try to understand the other. But once that process begins, it will be like the fire that Jesus talks about here. It will spread. But we have to have the courage to put ourselves on the line first, not by upholding our position, but by being quiet and listening. And then saying, discovering how to say, I understand. And eventually, that understanding will be discovering how to say truly and sincerely to our enemy, I love you.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you. Jesus said to his disciples, I have come to set the earth on fire, and how I wish it were already blazing. There is a baptism with which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it is accomplished. Do you think that I have come to establish peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. A father will be divided against his son, a son against his father, a mother against her daughter, and a daughter against her mother, a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. The Gospel of the Lord.